Is that too loud? Is it good? Is the music, the background okay? Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for being here. We're back this week, and I know we're going to get into more of Andor here in a few minutes, but before we do that, like, before we get into the details at all, I have to say that this is the first episode of all of them where I think all of them hit me, but this one was sort of a sort of moment, especially at the end of, and I have the spoiler warning that'll come up in a minute, but especially at the end when we learned what's actually going on Narkina 5. Because I know, Ryan, you and I had talked about, probably many people had talked about the idea of like the other thing that we thought they were building and what was actually happening, like that we theorized might be going on. I don't want to say too much till we get into the show, but then to hear what actually is going on was like, oh, it was sort of surprising and also not totally surprising and heartbreaking at the same moment. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have guests to talk about this. This is not like just my favorite Star Wars show. This is like one of my top 3 favorite television shows. Like, yeah. I love this show, and I know that there's been a lot of comments about how this show is very political. It's not exactly what a lot of people expected, but it's hitting me in all the right ways. Like, I love this, and I think I made a joke about this yesterday of the last show, Jeff, but I feel like this show that I kept waiting for someone to like take their glasses off and clean them and say, "You've been living in a dream world, Neo." Like, I felt like there was this moment where it was this is a show that has something to say, and I like shows that stand out and say something and don't be in the middle of the road and don't try to please all parties. I love shows that are like this. But yeah, I'm so excited to have guests that we can talk about this too.
I mean, Cassian's one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. So when they announced all the shows that were coming out like 2 years ago, I think it was, like, this was the show that I was excited about. And it's been really interesting to see people's responses to it, because a lot of the toxic fanboys that are usually ranting about the new Star Wars show are just not saying anything. And I don't know if that's because they don't have any criticisms or if they're not watching it at all. But this is peak Star Wars. This is, this is everything I was waiting for and more. It's amazing.
What's fun is I have the exact opposite experience where, sorry, not with the fanboys, but this show was not on my radar at all, because I am big into the lore and books and all this stuff, and so I've been waiting on Acolyte. I want to dive into the Force, into the dark side, and all this stuff. But for me, my favorite part of Star Wars has been the books, and because the books do get deeper, they do say more things, they do have better representation, and this is giving me books. That's what this is giving me right now, and I love it. Right? There's so many really interesting Star Wars books that are completely separate from the Jedi, completely separate from the Force. Alphabet Squadron and all this stuff. And it's hitting on all those. The writing is so good.
Yes, it is. I completely agree with you. Ryan and I've talked about this a bunch of times, but it's kind of hard to see on the shelf behind me, but they're all there. My comics are all on the floor back there. But these, I'm with you that I love both sides of it. I love that we get all the Space Wizard stuff. Like, I don't mean to be snarky when I say it that way, but like all the stuff in the High Republic, and like I love this stuff is like the crux of what Star Wars feels like, has always felt like to me.
Yep.
Oh, you lucky.
Oh, look at you.
It's on my pre-order list. I just want it so bad. You and so many others that I know that are like, they get the early edition. I'm like, but I love that side of Star Wars so much. And I found also that after watching Rogue One, which has become, it's still my favorite Star Wars movie. After watching it, it's my favorite because there's no big hero that can come in and save the day. There's no, Jedi, Padawan, or Master that can come in and be like, I have all these things that I can really like become a shift in the story immediately because I've got the stuff. It's people having to deal with real problems people would have to deal with in this very fascist environment that they're in for the most part. And like they have to deal with it and figure it out. It's the reason why I've ended up loving Andor so much, because like this is what happens when there's no one else around to help you. You're going to have to figure this out. This is what we get, and it makes it, at least for me anyways, it makes it so emotional to watch, because you can everybody can identify with multiple characters in any show. It doesn't matter what they look like or their background or gender. None of that matters. There's something about every one of these characters you watch and go, holy crap, wow. Like,
Yeah.
I have felt that, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, oh, please go
That's
ahead.
Rodel. I love him so much. And Sophie's okay.
Who is that?
Yeah.
Who did you say?
He's a really tall
Oh.
Rodel. He has like 3 lines. Nurture bullies him.
This,
It's my new Glep Shadow.
and I've said this before. I also think that this show has some of the best weird background characters that you'll just see, like a weird floppy nosed like creature that's just having a conversation. And you're like, I don't know who that is, but I love him and I wish him the best. You know, it makes me happy because it's so lived in, and that's what makes it feel real.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I really, the thing that I like about this show, and I like that it's a show that seems to increase its complexity every week, and it starts with the theme. I love that. I love that that's a subtle hint that every week it's going to get a little bit more complex. Like the very first episode of the opening theme for Andor, it's very like orchestral. It's just very like standard. And then every episode, which mimics like the storyline, the theme becomes more complex. With this latest episode, like starting out with this like heavy synth track, like it's like every part of this production has hit me in the right way. I think that all art is political already, so I like when art takes political stands. But I love the fact that this show is just like a slow burn. It's like just kind of wheeling you in week over week, making its story just that much more complex. And this week, I feel like, I mean, this show seems like they've got a lot to say about people, about work, about fascism that we experience in I believe in our own lives. How we treat the elderly in our community. I mean, I don't know where to start, and I came with notes. There's so much.
It keeps just slowly ratcheting up the tension every single episode, and it feels like you're pulling a rubber band, and then the next episode you pull it a little bit further, and then a little bit, and you're just like, oh my god, I know it's gonna snap and it's gonna hurt me. And then like next episode it's a little bit further and you're like, it didn't snap, oh my god, it's gonna hurt worse.
You're like,
the more it goes on, and yeah, that's what the show feels like.
it totally
Also,
does. Why don't we
top
switch?
tier
Why don't we
dialogue,
like
right?
get into the show fully, hear the stream fully, and then we can just dive even more into this. You guys good? All right, let's
Sounds good.
let's do it. Oh, and I need to fix your cameras. I should have done that earlier, but that's okay. It's okay. We have the technology. Yeah. Oh, why isn't your camera there? Dang it. Ignore me. This always happens.
Well,
It's just drop it in the link. It's all good. You don't need to see me anyways.
Where are you?
Well, Emily, Brandon, it's so great to have you with us. And to everybody that's watching us live, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Of course, we'll always remind people to subscribe. We always like having you come back. For Team Replay, thank you very much for listening on us too. We always appreciate the replays as well. But so excited to talk about episode 9 for Andor. Yeah, like as we were talking about is in kind of the lead up to starting the show. This is I totally agree with you about Brandon, about the tension, about how it's just like kind of ratcheting up every little bit. Like every episode I feel like there's like an elephant sitting on my chest or something. Like I'm just tense. It's hard to like it's so hard to watch some of these scenes, and everything seems to be so dangerous for all these characters. Every character, it just seems like they live in danger.
Like the last episode for me, episode 8, Cassian, the whole episode, he looks like he's going to pass out. And like I have PTSD too. Like I think that Cassian is exhibiting extreme signs of PTSD, like from the probably episode 1. But just like the way he looked the whole episode like he does right before I completely go horizontal from a panic attack. But this week I just had like acid reflux watching it the whole time. And I don't know if I had too much coffee yesterday, but it was just like, it's so intense. Like my whole body is feeling it.
I found myself while I was rewatching it tonight, like just before we came into the show, just to kind of take some notes and things. And I found myself actually having to skip over the scenes with Mon Mothma and her family. I don't know what it is about those scenes, but they're hard for me to watch. Like I can almost deal with all of the other stuff. I don't know why, but something about those family scenes are really, really difficult for me to watch. There's something about watching a dysfunctional family with a lack of connection with their kids, especially as a parent. Like, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's a combination of other things too. It's more nuanced. But every time I watch one of those scenes, I'm just like, oh, okay. I think I need to pause and kind of fast forward a little bit because I'm like, I got it. I know this isn't great. Let's go ahead and move on. Like I like, let's get back to the prison scene. I can almost deal with that a little bit more.
It's funny you said, because when we get to the family scenes of Cyril and his mom, I just laugh hysterically because it's like watching Arrested Development with like how
all the money's
awkward
in the banana
and terrible
stand.
she treats it. One of the things that's also been like really blowing my mind with the way that these stories are being crafted is how every single episode is titled. This one was titled Nobody's Listening. And as you go through each and every person's storyline, it's interesting. There's so many cases. You know, we have Dedra talking to Bix, trying to get her information. Bix is like, even if I tell you, you're still gonna do it, aren't you? And she's like, yeah, because they don't care. She's not actually. She's not listening. You know, we have Mon Mothma trying to make this impassioned speech to the Senate, where like in the Clone Wars, Padme would do this triumphantly and win the day, but nobody's listening to her. We get them in the prison, and the reason they're able to move about is no one's listening, no one's paying attention, and every single like Cyril's about to have a heart attack because people aren't listening to him, and it bounces back and forth with every single character. It's just a cool theme.
Yeah, I didn't notice that about the titles too. I think like 2 episodes ago was called Announcement. Like I think episode 7 was called Announcement, and then 2 episodes later, this is No One's Listening. And I think that's interesting, especially because what's happening in the prison is analogous to like what's happening in the Galactic Empire, where it's like there's this festering rebellion that the ISB is trying to hunt down, but nobody's listening. No one's hearing it. And all of these things that are happening kind of like under better left ignored. I didn't think about that, but I think that's a really insightful comment because like that's everything that's happening, and again, it's what's happening in the prisons, what's happening on Coruscant, it's happening in that room with Bix, and it's fueled by a sense of overconfidence that it's like, oh yeah, we've got you under control, we've got you under thumb. Yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
And just real quick before we move on, I'm not going to change scenes because I realized I didn't have the videos fixed for the other one, so I'm not going to disrupt this. But I will throw there's going to be spoilers. If you haven't already picked up on that, everyone watching now or team replay, there will be a lot of spoilers. So if you haven't watched Andor episode 9 yet, you should probably just apologies, but you should probably go watch the show first before you come back. Just saying. I'm a terrible host. Sorry.
I was going to point out that No One's Listening bounces right back off of one of the last lines that Cassian has in Rogue One, where I think Jin asks him, do you think anyone's listening? Right after they send the signal. up from
Ooh,
Scarif.
I like that a
And
lot.
I can't remember if it's Cassian or Jin that says that. Yeah, I think they're listening. But
Yeah.
it's
Wow. That's like the climb. That's like
Hmm.
when they're trying to rise and the climb.
yeah,
I love
Hmm.
you know, this is what I mean. Like I think the show and everything is just beautifully produced, but I feel like in the best way, like it's got that onion quality where it's like you just keep peeling back these layers, and it's so dense. But if there's one thing that I gotta say is congratulations on that casting, because talk about like finding people from like small roles, whether it's Mon Mothma originally cast for deleted scenes now in episode 3, or you know, bit players in Rogue One, or of course Diego Luna, who are now like carrying this series. And also so great to see Andy Serkis in this show. Like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, like every scene that he's in, it's just like you know, it's what a great actor can do with like a very specific role. Like this is a character role, and like he's just like bringing it to so much life.
They another thing they've done so well is with these characters. You mentioned Andy Serkis. I hated him last episode. I hated him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a man who's a prisoner, and he's acting like a warden to other prisoners. You know, like this is the lowest of the low. And then this episode, he turns it around, and you
yeah,
understand why. Right? He had full faith in the system that was never going to reward him for playing its game. But then on the other side, you have Dedra, who like you were rooting for when she's in this boardroom full of these men who were like accusing her of just trying to climb politically and trying to put her in her place, and she just dog walks him, and you're like, yeah, get him. And then she comes and tortures Bix, and you're like, no, fascism.
It's so true. I felt a lot of in Dedra's performance in the torture scene. I felt a lot of Thrawn in that. Not necessarily in some of the other scenes with her, yes, but a lot of sort of methodical, not going to be disrupted emotionally by the thing that is happening in front of her. Like this thing she's prepping this Bix for, that she knows what's going to happen to her. She knows Bix is not going to talk. She knows exactly what they're going to do to her before she hands it over to the completely, like, I don't even want to say psychotic doctor, but this doctor who is clear. What did I write down? Like, this person who she knows, this person sees the world as completely procedural. Like, the person's not talking. This doctor's not talking to another human. This person's almost like the person who works in a morgue and prepares the bodies, who just kind of talks to himself because there's no one else to talk to. Like, that's what I got from that doctor. And Didger knows it. Like, she knows, I'm going to hand you this person who just doesn't feel anything for you at all. And there was a very sort of methodical approach that Dedra brought to that, especially in how she used, I mentioned it earlier, but the way she controls her facial expressions, the most subtle expressions, change almost entirely how you feel about her in like a moment. Like, she's talking to Bix, and then with a raise of an eyebrow, she goes from like super intense to, oh, she's just going back into methodical mode again. And it's like, you are one of the scariest people I've ever seen. Like, I would be so freaked out if I was Bix in just those moments, because she, especially Brandon, to your point, when she said, like, are you gonna believe me anyway? No. But she doesn't just say no. She gets this slow, toothy grin, and then no. And it's like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God.
It had Han Solo vibes when he's like, they didn't even ask me any questions.
Oh, the cut that happens at that is when the door closes and it goes to someone walking away. That is the exact same cut of Princess Leia's torture scene too.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were subtle things where they did that. It's like they were all of these callbacks, whether it's Han Solo or Princess Leia on the Death Star. Like, but yeah, like I totally agree with you on how weird that was. It reminded me of the movie Brazil, which is Jonathan Pryce, and at the end he is experiencing exactly that, or like 1984, There's all like I feel like this is starting to become a collection of all these like mid to late 70s, early 80s political dystopian thrillers, where it's like how people are just trying to survive, not thrive, like just survive in a totalitarian regime. But yeah, like that was a scary scene, and just the matter-of-fact way of like, oh yeah, I'm going to describe like what the torture is of this. And it was like even I was thinking of like Geordie LaForge, Star Trek Next Generation. We have a regular viewer who I always have to bring up a Star Trek reference. Geordie LaForge experiences
I love
something like
TNG,
this.
so it's
Oh
all
well, then I'm sure you caught my other favorite Star Trek reference is "Make It So." Was also uttered in this episode. But yeah, like that scene was terrifying, and just like how buttoned up everybody was about it. It was it's just scary.
and just real quick, the guy doing the torture, he has a smile on his face for most of it. Like he looks like it's like restrained jubilation, to a quote from Seinfeld. But he seems proud of this thing that they can do with the sounds of the screams of dying alien species children. And
Children.
this and they remixed it to make it more potent. So somebody was in like a DJ booth, like, you know, making remixes, which is also insane. Probably this guy, and that's probably why he's smiling. But the fact that we don't hear it was like the scariest part. They play with music in this show really well. They also play the silences just as loudly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing about Dedra and Gorsk is like there are Imperials who like they don't really know what the Empire stands for or what fascism is or what they're really doing. They're just there to do a job. The Dedra and Gorsk know exactly what they're doing and what they stand for, and they believe in fascism. They believe in evil, and that's part of what makes them so scary. Is they're not just doing a job; they're doing this job on purpose.
Yeah, that scene was the scariest, probably the most scared and the most like intense feelings I had, I think, through all of this series so far. To both of your points, I think the one additional, I don't think I can add much more than what you already said, but the one additional thing I wanted to call out that really hit home for me was when he pulled the doctor pulled the headset out that he's going to put on her. And he pulls the headset out. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a VR headset. Oh my God, this is even worse. Blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking sort of like Daniel Suarez's books, Demon and Freedom, where they put the helmet on and they do this functional MRI thing. Then no, when he just puts it on the back of their head, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to see her react. And then the camera pans directly onto her face and we are staring right down her eyes while she's experiencing it. But she basically blank stares. She can't see us anymore, but we can see what her oh my God, that, to your point, Emily, like now knowing what she's experiencing. The second time I watched it tonight, I actually forgot that at the end of it, she screams as the segue to the next scene. I forgot that she screams. So to hear it again, I actually turned the volume down because my son was in bed and I'm like, oh my God. Like it kind of washed over me again, how the reinforcement that from the doctor of like, well, this won't take, don't worry about it. This isn't going to take very long. Maybe it's going to feel like a long time to you, but it's not going to take very long. Again, so like sterile and procedural. Like this is just a thing I do. And to your point, Brandon, like he is so excited about he doesn't even see her as a person. He is like, you're an experiment, and thanks for giving me the chance to experiment. And like you're the the part of the case study that I need to run. I really appreciate you being here and letting me do my case study because this is for my doctoral thesis. And like, no big deal. He doesn't even see her as a human. She's just a way to experiment this thing, test out this thing that they think is going to work for these purposes, but doesn't see this torture. It's just sees it as this is the job I got to do every day. And I'm really good at it. And I thoroughly enjoy it, which to your point, Emily, makes it even creepier how into what the Empire or really the Emperor stands for some of these people, especially the ISB is. And that's frightening. That is disturbing.
Like Big says, the worst is of the worst.
Yeah.
Just real quick. And I feel like I'm talking a lot, but, real quick, the actor Denise Gao, who plays Dedra, had a quote that I really liked from one of these conventions recently in Europe, and she said, I'll just read it real quick. It's important to her that the no factions are outlined. Dedra feels like the heroine of her story, and that's why she's frightening. It is fascist. She believes in something, but it is fascism. At first, you have to cheer for her. You feel you are cheering for her, but then you realize no matter how strong a woman is in a world of men, you realize that she is only a fascist in a world of fascists. And I love how they multifaceted the character is, because, like you said, we are watching this woman in this world of men having to battle to be the top fascist, but then we get Cyril accosting her. And in that scene, she's still a woman being accosted by this deranged man. And it plays with this weird power balance back and forth that is very interesting. I don't have the tools to fully unpack it, but I love to explore it.
I mean, I've been stalked before, and I've only encountered one stalker in person, and it wasn't quite like this. Like, it wasn't someone waiting outside my job. And for me, like, this moment was so uncomfortable. Like, I started dissociating, I think, the first time I watched through it, just because it doesn't really matter who the guy is when this happens to you. Like, obviously she's an ISB agent, and this is just some little guy. Like, he's not like, a big muscly dude. Like, he's not pointing a weapon at her. But she knows now that he's been watching her, and he's obsessed with her. And I don't even know what he wants. Like, does he want a job? Does he want a girlfriend? He uses the word beauty when he's saying, like, what he felt when they had their conversation, which Dedra points out was an interrogation, not a conversation. And he said that he thought there could be beauty in the Empire again. And it's like, is he talking about her as a woman, or her work as, a fascist in the ISB? And then he grabs her, and like, I feel like any person can relate to that, like having someone grab you when you're, against your will, and you're trying to like de-escalate a situation and leave. But especially, like, I've had a man put his hands on me like that before, and it was scary, even though it was an 80-year-old dude. Like, it's just, you feel you lose your power in that moment. And so even though she's literally the cops, in that moment she's afraid, because she doesn't know what this guy is capable of, because he's nuts.
Yeah, he gave me, now that you say it that way, very serial killer kind of vibes. Thinking about it that way, but also both of you just mentioned that the idea that when she tells him that wasn't a conversation, it was an investigation. Thinking back on how she says it to him, I'm realizing now, Emily, after you just described those things, that it very much felt like it didn't feel like what you would expect was, I'm reminding you that that's not what that was. It feels like a defense mechanism, that I'm telling you, like, I'm not reminding you because I'm trying to be intimidating. I'm almost trying to remind you as in, like, we are not friends. This is not going to be a friendship. There's not going to be something here. I'm reminding you that whatever you have spinning up here that isn't spinning, it's a little spinning off kilter there. That, like, whatever you think that is not what that was. I'm going to tell you that that's not what that was, which is very, I don't want to just associate this broad term of psycho to it, because I think that's just a little too overgeneralized and used, but there is definitely a mental instability or mental health issue going on. I mean, we've been seeing that since Cyril's whole thing collapsed. Well, and even before it collapsed, like when he was going off and like so intense about this thing, we are like, okay, this dude's going to have he's got some issues going on, but there's clearly some mental health problems that he is dealing with, or I should say rather not dealing with. And he's, as a result, he's expressing it in ways that is not helpful to himself or to other people, which is probably going to cause even more unintended consequences that Dedra and others at the ISB and other people are not expecting to happen, because they're trying to almost like not dismiss, but sort of like, yeah, okay, you just need to go away. But he's not. And they keep bringing him back in these ways, especially with his mom. And I have to switch, like, his mom and Uncle Harlow will be so proud. I am really curious what Ryan and I talked about this last week. I'm weirded out a lot by this Uncle Harlow thing. I really,
Yeah.
this like
It's weird. It's
It's
super weird.
It's a corpse in their closet.
No, seriously, like Uncle
Psycho,
Harlow
the
is some
rocking chair up in the
unhealthy
window.
relationship. like Uncle Harlow is some unhealthy relationship. Anytime a full-grown adult person, older adult person, is constantly referring to someone as an Uncle so and so, it's like, who is this benefactor? What do you owe this person?
Yeah, you're not gonna walk out of the room and change clothes and come back and say, "Hi, I'm Uncle Harlow." It's like
100% weird. 100%. Yeah, but I think that that whole setup is one that I keep thinking about how this show plays with a lot of extremes. It's like a stage play of like fanatics. It's like all these people are crazy fanatics, and it's like they all keep crashing into each other. And whether it's like politics, people, or it's personal, or it's professional, it's like all of these people are fanatics. There's another thing that is done so smoothly, where it's like the things that you'll compromise to get to your goal. Like, what are you willing to compromise? What are you willing to give up? And it's like, what all these characters are willing to give up to get something they want. And Mon Mothma has to like talk about possibly dealing with a gangster so that way she can get the loan. So that it's like what muck will you put your hands in? And then right after that scene, we go into a scene in the ISB where Dedra very, very casually talks about killing someone and staging their body so that way it looks like an accident. And these are all around that scene with Cyril. It's crazy. It's like waves of fanaticism, all of them hitting each other, all of them thinking they're right. And I don't think there's anything more dangerous than a fanatic that thinks that they're right. There's so much danger there because what they're willing to do and sacrifice to do. So yeah, it's crazy.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Cyril does come off to me as this story's explanation on how easily and quickly certain people can be radicalized, and the type of people that are targeted for such things. He was just this, he's the textbook, he's just the single guy who's living at home. His mom doesn't respect him. He's like, "Mom, you got into my special box again. I know it."
What?
And
I have ways of knowing. Like, oh, dude,
that's weird.
No.
But his mom doesn't actually care about him. She cares about the bragging rights that he could possibly bring to her. And the only time she stops harping is when he's like, "Well, I got a promotion," and she's like, "Well, that's what I wanted to hear." And Dedra was the only person that noticed him. So at his day job at Space Accountants, where every day there's no, the only expression he has is a super weird tie that looks like a seatbelt coming out of his chest. Dedra was the only person that noticed him, and he took it and ran. He ran way too far with it. But I do look forward to seeing where his story ends up.
Like, I did think that he was going to end up rebelling, like seeing what the Empire really was and turncoat. But after this episode, I'm like, oh no, he's dangerous, like as a human being. Mm-hmm. He's the guy that you smile at the grocery store, and now he thinks that you're obsessed with him. Yeah. So I have a 20-pound cat trying to shake me out of my seat right now. But incidentally named Chopper. So it's,
Oh, that's awesome.
payoff.
By the way, my theory is that in his box, he has a Lisa Frank Trapper Keeper that has Dedra's name written all over it.
I was expecting that box to come back into play, and I kind of thought there would be little little things like that. I thought that was the strangest line. You got into my secret box. I thought that I again, like, kudos to whoever is writing this show, because it's
Yeah.
like it is like top tier, and the acting on all those scenes. That's what I mean. It's just like that scene was crazy. And the camera keeps getting closer and closer to their faces, and you just feel like, I don't know, and I know this is a thing that they're going for, but everybody just feels like they're in some sort of prison. Whether it's Cyril, whether it's Bix, obviously Bix, obviously Andor, Cassian Andor. It's everybody's trapped in either a situation or something of their own making. Even Deirdre, to some extent, it's like they're all in a system that's holding them down.
It's interesting that you say that, right? Because as you were talking about that, I'm thinking back to this last episode, and it feels like at least in this last episode, the only person I can think of that was walking around outside of their own volition was Dedra. Nobody else was. Like, yes, Cassian walks around, but he's inside a prison. But everybody else is in the only place we see them moving around. Even Mon Mothma, she's either in her apartment, or sometimes she's walking into Luthen's store in previous episodes, but mostly this last episode, she's in her apartment, or she's in her little, hockey puck in the Senate with nobody listening to her, and then she's back in her apartment again. And it definitely, even Cyril standing outside the ISB isn't moving anywhere. He's just there. He's there being extraordinarily creepy, but he is there. And of course now, damn it, Brandon, now literally all I can think of is like some high school movie with somebody sketching on their notebook, all these lovable things, but not the lovable, like the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
Great.
But
now I have to go buy a Trapper Keeper tomorrow.
and just to add to that, I think that's why they introduced Cyril, because they want it, like, everybody's got a feeling of threat. Like in that moment when he grabs her elbow like that and kind of jerks her to him and says, "I know what you want." I remember thinking, like, wow, they wanted to show that even the person who feels the most in control is not also in control. It's that control is this illusion. And even for the prisoners, it's an illusion. All of these things are an illusion. And the feeling that you can control others, that's also an illusion. And I think that's kind of playing to the rebellion, that all of this control is like a mask that sits over all this stuff. And that really, it only lasts as long as people believe it. It's like a magic act. That control, that fascism, that all these things are only as powerful as we believe in them to be. Are they always listening to us? No, they are not. They're not always listening. But see, it's maybe they could be. You'll get out after your 40 more shifts. You'll be getting out. No, it's all this illusion that the
Emperor's
it's like a
clothes.
prison of the mind.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a prison of the mind. It's the Emperor's clothes. Exactly that. It's a thing that we believe in to self-police.
Can we talk about Perrin? Because that dude is a prison unto himself. Like, if I had to be in a room with him,
sucks.
like if I had to be in a room with him for more than like 5 minutes, one of us would die. It's just not.
I don't think there's enough alcohol to hang out with that dude for very long. There just isn't.
And I don't drink. I have kidney disease. I can't go alcohol.
Oh. You know, Emily, you and I were messaging, DMing before the show, kind of talking about some of this stuff. And like, you brought up Perrin, and I'm like, oh God, every time I hear this guy's name, I see him on screen, I just want to like throw up in my mouth a little bit. But in that scene where like the family's having some meal, breakfast, or I don't know what it is, and Vel is at the table with them, I think you were totally right on that. I was thinking that Perrin was frustrated with Mon. I mean, one, because they got married at 16. Like, that's a freaking long time to be married, and you were kids. Like, and it's 40. gross for a whole other set of reasons. But whatever. We'll put that aside. That's a different show, probably. But in that scene, I keep thinking that Perrin is like this person who is just irritated that Mon is like, dude, stop messing up the good thing we got here. Like, we got all this stuff, we get to party with all these people. Stop making waves. And that he's like influencing the daughter, and the daughter just doesn't like her mom, whatever. But you had said something about and kind of brought up the idea that he's actually manipulating both Mon and the daughter, like in a very intentional set of ways. And I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah, I think he's playing the daughter off of Mon. Like, he is jealous of her status, and the daughter is rightfully jealous of the amount of time that Mon gives to the Senate. And that's something that happens when you have a parent who has that kind of job. But a supportive partner would, try and figure out how to make more family time, would explain to the daughter, this isn't your mother's fault. She loves you. Here's, ways that maybe we can work something out. But he is deliberately playing her off of Mon. And in the scene where Vel comes and gives her that really fancy dress, and Mon is like, oh, your father will never let you wear that. The daughter, Lita, says, oh, he lets me do whatever I want. And from Mon's face, she knows that's true. And the parent who lets you do whatever you want is the parent making the other parent miserable.
Right.
Because they get to be the fun parent.
And in that moment, what I love that you called that one out, because the first thing that came to mind for me is, if that was me walking into my son and my son being, Daddy, look at my son's 7. Like, Dad, look what Mom just got me. And Mom's standing right there or close by. My first thought was like, oh, that's really rad. I'm so like, that's super cool. But that's not the go-to for Mon. The go-to for Mon is some snarky snippet at her husband, and the daughter, like, the daughter, even in that moment when she gets the dress from Vel, she spins around. She's so happy. You can see her like genuinely happy for a moment. She engages with her mom. She goes, look what Vel got me. And she's actually genuinely happy. And that's a moment that Mon could have very easily just said, oh, it's going to look gorgeous on you. You should go try it on. But she doesn't take the opportunity. She just snide remark at the husband, and the daughter instantly falls back into, well, screw you. I'm going to go do something else now. It's like, wow, like it's almost like you're not even trying.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, but also then a dinner parent does homophobia. So like, I just really, just like, how do you win with this husband?
I mean, I fully imagine that he is homophobic, but that moment played to me like he literally is so numb that he has no idea doesn't care about anything, including her family. But I laughed so hard. Did you find a husband? Like, I wasn't looking. And then like knowing smile of like,
it's not a journey I'm on, dude. Sorry.
I gotta say, few things I think would feel better than my fist on like just this portion of Perrin's head. Like, I that would make me so happy.
Yeah, just right there. Just something.
No, I think too. It's like, he also represents the part of Cassian who thought, hey, like, I've got it made in the shade. Like, I can go and like spend time in Space Miami and be, take it easy. Like, I've got money and no one's gonna touch me. And it's like, that's what you think until they're at your door. That's what you think until you're arrested, and that's what you think until you're disappeared. And I think that's a part of that character. But I also think, again, like, speaking to systems, I don't think it was an accident that they talk about how, oh yeah, they follow like systems, like traditional systems, like how they got married at 16. That those can be systems of oppression and prisons. That I feel like this whole show is constantly taking. And this is, by the way, like, to me, like, great science fiction is a stand-in for things that we all encounter in our everydays. And I think this is taking broad hits at systems, at belief systems, at traditional views, even the work, even how people dedicate their lives to work so they can retire. And I mean, I think that's why I like this show so much, is that whether it is talking about, having a character like Perrin where it's like, man, you hate this guy, but it's like he stands for something that the show's trying to say, maybe we shouldn't accept these things. Maybe, if you don't like this character, that character stands for something else. And maybe that's something you should look in your own life and say, I you know what, we shouldn't tolerate this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like if you're
That's
comparing
interesting.
Perrin to Cassian, Cassian goes to Space I think it's Space Tampa. Like I maintain that it's Space Tampa. But he goes to Space Tampa and he's got money and he's got, his whole life figured out, or at least for the next few months. And he gets arrested for walking on the beach near something that happens. That will never happen to Perrin Firtha because he's rich and he's white and he's from a good family and he has government connections. Like Perrin is the embodiment of privilege in this show. He's so privileged that he gets to be stupid. He doesn't even have to understand how the government works.
I agree with that.
He doesn't
I agree
have
with
to
that.
care.
Mhm.
I have literally had guns pulled on me because I matched a description in an area, and it ain't fun, and it's whew, even up where you guys are, up in Sacramento, there was a lot of things, a lot of wild stuff happened,
Man.
especially around Citrus Heights area.
Mm-hmm.
No bueno.
Yeah.
But he that's what it is. He doesn't have to care because none of that stuff that's happening anywhere else, none of the Gorman stuff, none of the policies that these politicians that he's friends with implement. He doesn't care about those people's politics. He thinks they're fun people to hang around with. He doesn't have to care about any of this stuff. And I think that's part of the biggest issues with their relationship is he's like, why do you? We don't have to care about this stuff. And the way this, Mon Mothma finally gets someone there that does care about this stuff. And when she's with Vel, she has a genuine smile in quite a few scenes. And then she says goodbye. And the scene leaves with just Mon standing in the middle of this big open room as it slowly zooms out and she's alone again. It's powerful imagery.
It really was. It really resonated when I saw that scene for sure. Like just like you said again, Tay, was his name? The Chenja so Tay, but he leaves. Vel leaves, and to your point, Brandon, like Vel leaving was the more impactful one because she reminded Mon this. It was so interesting to hear Vel basically repeat. What is her partner's name? I can't remember.
Cinta.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So repeating Cinta's words to Mon about we've given to this, we've accepted, we take what's left after the rebellion, those sorts of things. And these last couple episodes have definitely felt like Mon is being actively confronted with the reality of what running a rebellion or starting a rebellion actually is going to be. Like, I don't think she was ever like unaware of what she was trying to do, but the confrontation, that's probably too strong of a word, but the confrontation with her and Luthen in one of the previous episodes, and he's like, this is what this looks like. I don't know what you thought you were signing up for, but this is what this actually is. And then I think even more so in this episode when Vel did it, I think that's what, at least that's how I view it, is that's what finally made her realize this is what we're actually doing. We can't ignore it. We can't try to hide from it. We are trying to start a rebellion, and it is not going to be fun or exciting. Like, come join the rebellion, save the galaxy. Like, it is not going to be a Big Brother poster, recruiting poster on the wall someplace. It's going to be a lot of hard work that's going to make you suffer, and you're going to have to abandon a lot of things to do it. But it's what we want because we believe it's the right thing to do. And that, at least the way I read that scene when it zooms out and she's standing there, is almost like a culmination of all kinds of realizations finally hitting her that, okay, I'm left with a choice. Like, I have to either accept this or not. But the choice is, it's not just one thing. It's, I have to accept all of this or I don't. It's not piecemeal.
Interesting. Sorry, just real quick. I like how that's making me think because their entire apartment is so pristine and all of her clothes, she's always wearing white or really light colors because she's someone that does not have to get dirty. She does not have to do the work herself. And I think that might be symbolic of that. And that's her realization of like, Things are gonna get messy.
Yes.
Yeah, no, she's got that this isn't going to be like I totally agree with this because I think that's where that conversation happens with Luthen, where it's like I wasn't, why wasn't I informed about this? And it's like, this is a rebellion. Like your hands are going to get dirty now. This is not a clean business. This isn't going to be antiseptic. Like, you're not going to give a speech and suddenly it's like a war on jealousy. Like, it's not going to happen that way. It's going to require you to dip your hands into the muck, and you're not going to come out clean on the other side. And this is going to be violent. But I think, though, too, we were talking about privilege before. I think this also reflects a little bit of that privilege, which again is, I think, a part of the illusion of what power is. And power is who holds it, and the person who holds it is the emperor. That's where and everybody else is subject to the emperor's whim until that's pulled away. And in other fascist systems, it's the exact same way. As long as you're a favorite, you're okay. As long as you're on side, you're okay. But you could even be an upstanding person. It was like how they were talking about just how they were taking people in prisoner. And yeah, you could just be disappeared. You could just be, and again, like I this is something that I find to be just wildly important to be talking about right now, about what these systems are really like, because it's easy for people to say, and this is said in one of the party scenes earlier, is, well, as long as you don't get into trouble, as long as you follow the rules, you'll be fine. And it's like, no, that's not the truth. Because you're not the one holding the gun. You're not the one who's really in power. And those people can make those changes at whim. Just because you follow all the rules doesn't mean that everything's going to be fine. And again, I cannot believe this is a Disney Plus show. These are really heady topics for which I think Star Wars has always been there. But this is a really crazy, awesome thing to be talking about.
And we look at the Senate and, the privilege again. So many of those Senate seats are empty because only humans are in the Senate. You don't see any aliens in the Senate other than the Grand Vizier and Sly Moore, I think. And there's an election going on in the United States right now on Tuesday. Everyone should go vote. And a lot of that comes down to, like, the people making the rules are the people who have the most privilege, right? And if we don't put people in the Senate, either in the real world or in Star Wars, who have the diverse experiences to understand what it looks like when the rules suddenly don't apply to you because of what you look like or where you come from, you just get that stagnant.
Well, and you get a
fascism.
slow decline into, I don't even know how to say it, but you get this slow or not so slow decline into, well, if we were okay with this thing and no one seemed to be bothered by it, we could do this other thing. But then what if we could do this other thing? Esteban, actually, one of the comments that came in a little bit earlier from Esteban said, the big complaint I hear is the lack of aliens, which is what you brought up. By this point, they've been relegated to third-class citizens or even slaves. Yes. And I mean, for us as Star Wars geeks for a long time, we know how xenophobic the Empire has always been. I like the way that you called it out, Emily, and the way that Esteban called it out in the comments, that it's the lack of these things that we see on screen, and in this case, aliens in any capacity, is a reinforcement of what the Empire is really like. Like, is everything that we have seen is a reinforcement of what it is actually like to live in a fascist society. One of the things I wanted to touch on before, as we're kind of winding down on time, is in prison. Ryan and I had talked about this last week, and I know we were not the only ones. We were like not the people who came up with this idea, but I were talking about this. We were like in the prison when we were like, what are they building? What are those big crosses that look like cat tracks or something from World War II? Like, the theory, like they're Death Star parts of some kind. And then I know we talked about it, and probably many other people did at the same time, was like, or before us, was, maybe on one floor they're building them, but then it goes to the other floor and someone just disassembles them, and the two floors have really no idea. It's like a constant circle of just F you, basically. But then to get to this episode and to learn what is actually going on very much reminded me of 1984, where
Yeah.
to learn that you get released and get sent to another floor, but oops, we sent you to the wrong floor, and now people know about it, and we had to kill everyone on that floor to kind of scrape it under the rug, reminded me of the first time I read 1984 when the main character gets finally picked up by essentially the ISB and tortured, and all that stuff happens in the book, and then is just released. Like, go back, because basically the knowledge at that point is, at least the Empire's thinking is, now you know that there's nothing you can do. Like, you are here, and there's literally no place to go, and there's nothing you can do. I don't even need to worry about you, because, and that's what happens in 1984. Like, he goes back, and he's at the same coffee shop he was at earlier in the book, but he's a very different person than he was before, and just kind of isn't even going to try anymore, because just has been made to realize there is literally nothing that you can do. Obviously, in this show, it's going to be a different outcome, but that's what it feels like we're being led to believe. Like, the Empire, he says it, they don't care about these people. They don't care about them as humans, because they know that it doesn't make any difference. You're not going to get out of this place. So we just don't care about you.
Reminded me a lot of the 13th Amendment, but that's a whole different topic.
No, I think this. Oh, please, Emily. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying I also thought of the 13th Amendment when we were looking at prisons like this. And I actually had someone in my comments on TikTok today talking about how this isn't really a prison, it's a slave labor camp. And I'm like, what do you think prisons are in the U.S.?
Yeah,
got that going on
there
here.
Was the fact that they talked about death being freedom. It like this is and again, like, I think that this has a lot to say about prisons. This has a lot to say about the 40-hour work week. I don't think it was an accident that they're talking about 40 shifts. I don't think the number 40, in a lot of ways, that's again, this is a well-written show, so you got to think everything's there for a reason. Like, again, you're making choices, and I love shows that make choices. Andy Serkis has this speech that he says to Cassian. He says, hey, you want to get out of here, you got to turn that part of your mind off. And I thought about how many people have to do that every day going to work. Oh, you want to get out of here? You want to have a nicer life later? You just got to turn that part of your brain off. And I just kept, like, that is the line that stuck with me of what is trying to be said there, that you just need to turn your brain off and just knuckle under and move on. And Cassian's trying to tell him, no, don't you realize we're just expendable to them. We're cheaper than droids and easier to replace. That this again, I think this is talking a lot about prisons. I think this is talking about a lot of things. I think it's talking about how the intertwining nature. And again, like, I'm not trying to get uber political on this show, Jeff. I know I've done it in the past, but it's like the intertwining nature of capitalism and fascism and corporatism together, that these things, how we trade our lives away for building a widget, and then death is our release. That's what I mean. Disney Plus. I would have not expected this from you.
It does feel pretty odd coming from a corporation like Disney, and
right.
I feel like we could also replace the prison with Marvel's animation studios. But you know, that's another thing.
That is a different episode.
Real quick, I did want to talk about what was his name, Ulick, the older gentleman, and I loved the way, you know, first of all, this also just makes me love Andor more. You know, Cassian as a character, because of how much he's hyper observant. He's very smart. He picks up things very quickly, and he saw, okay, he's lagging behind. Let's switch so I can help and I can make up for the difference there. And it wasn't a burden, and it wasn't anything negative. It was just something you do because that's part of being in a community. But I have we had a close family friend who did have a major stroke, and he still lived another 8 years. You know, I mean, there was tough things, right? He had a tough time communicating. but he still got to have 8 more years of life, and it hit me because he Ulick had a stroke. He's 40 shifts left. 40. If you gave him medical attention, what would happen is he would go free. Yes, he would need medical care, and I'm sure there would be difficulties with that. But they're like, we'll euthanize him instead. They don't even get doctors there. It was just, it was so disheartening. And of course, we all knew he was not going to make it as soon as he's like, I'm 3 days away from retirement. That guy doesn't make it, but it hurt nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noticed is they made a point of showing that he was having memory loss, and maybe like some early on like signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. And in the past, I think the last episode, we see Marva having some issues with getting older and possibly dementia. And I wonder if Cassian saw that in Olaf. It made him think of his mom. And perhaps he'd seen those kinds of symptoms in his mom before, and that's why he was so protective of Olaf.
I could see that. I definitely
cool.
can see that. Brandon, what you were just talking about too is you made a comment about like I just got the 3 days left till retirement. It reminded me of a bit of Robert Duvall's character in Falling Down, where he's like it's like his last day on the job. He's got these. This is just the last day till he retires, and then it probably it culminates with like a conflict with Michael Douglas's character in that, and like of course the moment you said like you're retiring and you told us at the beginning of the movie, it's like crap. Okay. We know what's gonna happen now. Like when is you said it earlier, the rubber band, like when is it going to happen? Because it's clearly going to occur.
Don't buy any green bananas.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, listen, it's been awesome having you both on the show. We're a little over time right now, and I don't want to keep either of you too late. Emily, especially because you're up super late right now. And thank you. Really appreciate having you both on the show. Emily, start with you. You want to plug anything you want to plug before we close out tonight?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok at Your Weird on Emily. I'm on Twitter at EK_Anderson, and I have an Etsy shop where I make Lego jewelry. I make beanies and some fun like Star Wars apparel, and that's Your Weird Aunt Shop on Etsy.
Super excited about that. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, my beanie's showing up in a couple days or whenever it gets delivered. So I'm super excited. I need more beanies in my life for this winter. Awesome. And Brandon, do you want to? How about you? What do you want to? Where can people find you on the interwebs and the things that you like to do?
Yeah, so I am Darth Chaco on TikTok. I'm Darth Chaco on YouTube. You can check out the High Ground podcast. That's Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time here on YouTube, and then uploaded later wherever pods are cast. But I'm a solo operation, and I'm terrible at uploading things. But I do upload every week. There's a few backed episodes that I need to get up there. I'm also on Twitter at Darth Chaco 7. And Instagram deactivated my account for some reason. So stay tuned for that.
That's why I couldn't find you earlier. I was looking for your account so I could I want to make sure I could like repost something. And then when I looked, I'm like, oh, you're not there. What? Like anyway, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Everyone go check out their sites, check out their content. They're both awesome. Friends on TikTok, make amazing stuff. Ryan, it's been awesome. Glad you all could be here. Lots of amazing comments too, by the way. I know I didn't post a lot of the comments on the screen like I typically do in the show, but we were just going and I didn't really want to interrupt. But thank you everyone who's watching live. Amy, Esteban, who else was here? Joanna's been here. Thank you for being here, Joanna. Joanna's a friend of ours from work, or former friend from work.
She's a friend from work.
A friend from work. My buddy Tallboy jumped in, which is really cool. So it's been really great to have everybody here in the conversation and contributing. That's what makes this all fun. So thank you both for being here. And with that, I think we're going to call it a night.
It's been great.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Hey, bye everyone.
Bye.